You're listening to the Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast. Today's episode is all about holiday planning with challenging in laws. Are you a Catholic wife grappling with challenging in laws? The Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast is your sanctuary for navigating these sometimes stormy seas of life with toxic in laws while being validated for what you've experienced. Join me, your host, Miriam Susan, a Catholic wife who's weathered nearly 3 decades of in-law drama, as we tackle the tough issues you're dealing with head on. Hello, Miriam Susan here. On today's episode, we're going to be talking all about holiday planning with challenging in-laws. Now, I have seen a lot of talk in social media about holidays coming up and all of the stress that comes with it when you have a challenging, demanding, controlling, or even toxic in-laws. And so I wanted to create this episode with enough time so that you can approach the holidays as proactively as possible when you know there's probably going to be things that come up that are stressful, anxiety inducing, and just to help you approach this holiday season and approach this season of Advent and Christmas and all those things with a greater sense of peace. Because after all, why did Jesus come? Jesus came to save us and bring us everlasting peace, right? So let's go ahead and jump right in to the topic of today's episode. So I wanted to begin by talking about the importance of being proactive in your holiday planning to give yourself the greatest chance for family harmony. So one of the biggest reasons to do some pre-planning for your holidays is to help reduce the stress and anxiety that comes with these holiday events, holiday get togethers, holiday expectations, right? Because usually what happens is that there are these expectations that are put on us or put onto our families, put onto our children, and they don't necessarily always line up with how we might want things to go. So, planning ahead can help us reduce this stress and anxiety by helping us identify some potential stressors in advance so we can make a plan for how we're going to deal with them. I am not by nature a planner except in certain areas. So when it comes to gatherings and just day-to-day life, I don't tend to like to plan things out. But by doing that, it kind of leaves me kind of as like a ship on the seas, and I'm kind of at the mercy of however the winds are. If I've got a calm sea, then my days are calm. If I don't, if things are kind of chaotic around me, then I start to experience chaos. So having some advanced thought about what some potential stressors could be would be really, really helpful. Also, something that you might want to do is to create a detailed schedule to help you manage your time more effectively. Now, if you have in laws that might throw something at you at the last minute and maybe derail perhaps your holiday baking plans, holiday shopping plans, holiday decorating plans, your mass schedules, the commitments you have at your parish, having a schedule kind of is an opportunity for you to take some of the quote unquote blame off of you and put it on the schedule. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't fit into our schedule. You're not saying no. It's kind of going to the schedule. So that is where having a detailed schedule planned out in advance could really help reduce that stress. And then also, you want to set some realistic expectations for yourself and for your family. Sometimes we go into the holidays and we think, this Advent, we're going to do da 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 and have this list of things we're going to do. We're going to start doing all these things for the Christmas season. And we don't take into account that maybe somebody is going to get sick. That's how it always goes in our family. Somebody always ends up sick around Christmas time, maybe around Thanksgiving. And so have some realistic expectations of what you and your family at this stage in life are able to tackle. So, another reason to have some planning is to allow for creating space for some intentional family bonding. We all have outside influences that are trying to pull our attention away and outside of the home. And I don't think that that is what Jesus wants for us. I believe Jesus wants us to look for ways that we can plan specific activities that will bring our family close together, our immediate family, husband, wife, and children. Having a plan in place can also help you purposefully allocate some quiet time for your own reflection and for your own spiritual growth. Also, that's important for our children. We should not, hopefully, be succumbing to society's idea of being go, go, go on the run. The scriptures are very clear on how we are to live when it comes to busyness. We're not supposed to be busy, busy, go, go, go all the time. A lot of growth, a lot of listening and discerning comes from being quiet and having that time for reflection. And then another way to really be purposeful with family bonding during the holiday season, have some tech free times or tech free zones in your home where you can create connection. One thing that our family has not always been very good at, but we've kind of picked it up more recently, is doing game night. And that has been so much fun. Nobody's on their phone. Everybody's interacting. Everybody's having fun. They're laughing. They're playing games. And that is a great way to bring that sense of unity and family bonding together during the holidays is by playing some games, having some time when you're not all connected to your phone. And I know I am extremely guilty of this, but having that time to create some intentional family bonding time. And finally, a third reason to focus on some planning, it can help you align your actions with your own personal values and your Catholic faith. So, making sure that you have a plan can allow you time to reflect on what is the true meaning of the holiday season, the Advent season, that time of expectation and just awaiting for Christ to be born. It can also allow you to incorporate religious traditions that are meaningful to your family. So maybe you don't have an Advent wreath. And so creating an Advent wreath could be a great activity to incorporate to create a new tradition that is tied to your faith for your family for this season. And then one last way that I highly encourage you to pray about and seek out ways to do this is to find ways to serve others that align with your beliefs. So maybe your parish has a soup kitchen and they serve meals to the hungry on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Or maybe they have certain ministries that they partner with to help support during this special season. Find ways where we can take the focus off ourselves and focus on others. That's a really great way to really walk our faith and be Jesus to someone who may not know him. And I like this scripture from the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 14, verse 28. And this is from the New Revised Standard Version, Catholic edition. It says, "For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it?" This is how we can approach the holiday season. We are not necessarily building a tower, but we're building traditions. We're building a time with our family, and we should sit down and think about not only the cost, the financial costs, which is important, especially this time of year when inflation is very high. Things are just costing more than they used to. So maybe you're not going to be able to be as extravagant as you have in past seasons. This is a way for you to really sit down, think about all the extended family gatherings, any financial commitments that are involved with outside gatherings, and really think, Is this something that our family can swing this year? Is this something that we want to do? Having a plan will help you do that. The next point I want to cover is identifying personal and family priorities for the holiday season. We need to reflect on what truly matters to you and to your family. Have some discussions with your whole family to figure out what everybody's hopes are for this holiday season. Also, consider some past experiences. What has happened in past Christmas seasons, past Advent, past Thanksgiving, and find out what made it special to other members of the family and into you. Of course, we're including you in this discussion, and talk about what made them challenging. Were there things where maybe one Christmas you were overcommitted? You had 3 or 4 gatherings that you were supposed to go to over the course of a day or two, and you were all exhausted, and nobody was able to really enjoy fully any of those gatherings because you were concerned about getting to the next one, or you were exhausted from the one that you just left. So, talk it over with your family, find out what was special or what was challenging in past seasons. And then also identify what are some of the core elements that make this holiday season meaningful for you. Maybe one of your family traditions is stringing popcorn for a Christmas tree. And that is something that maybe you've kind of let slack off over the last few years just because you were busy, just because you were exhausted, or maybe just because you forgot to plan. And hello, I'm waving my hand at this one. I'm really good at forgetting things that my kids find meaningful. And having this time where you can reflect and talk about what makes the holidays meaningful for each one of you, that will make the holidays meaningful, hopefully, for everyone. Now, another thing to consider when you're talking with your family about what your priorities are is to distinguish between what are your obligations and what are your genuine desires. So, this is where you can get out a pen and paper, write down all of the expected activities that are options for your family, and go through them and categorize them as a must do activity or an optional activity. Let's say your parish has an annual Christmas craft sale. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Maybe it's something that you do enjoy. Maybe you have very crafty children. Maybe you or your children actually make items to sell. And maybe you did it last year and it didn't bring in sufficient money to cover the costs of being there. Discuss those things and figure out, is that a must do or is it optional? Another thing to think about is take some time to question some long-standing traditions. Do they still serve your family? Maybe you had a tradition where you all went walking in your neighborhood, you had hot cocoa, and you did Christmas caroling for the neighbors. And maybe over the past few years, you've gotten some unwelcome responses from some of your neighbors. Maybe you've just got some grumpy neighbors and they don't appreciate some holiday cheer. Think about whether that tradition is still serving your family or not. And then also, you need to learn how to say no to events that don't align with your priorities. Now, I am very good at saying no. Everyone in my family knows that. My husband knows it, my kids know it, my in-laws, my mom, everybody knows that I am very good at saying no. If you are not, it's okay. This is a chance for you to flex that muscle and get better at saying no. Not in a mean way, not in a harsh way. Just if somebody offers or extends an invitation to something, you can just say, I'll need to talk about it with my husband, but for right now, I'm going to have to say no. And then that's it. You don't have to explain. You don't have to, you know, overshare. You can just say something very simply like that. Learn how to say no if it's something that doesn't align with your priorities. I've found that it is much easier to say no and then change your mind and say yes later than it is to say yes and then change your mind and have to say no later, because then you're dealing with somebody's expectations of you being there or participating in something, and then you feel like you let them down. And so for me, I have found it's way easier to say, I don't think we're going to be able to make it, but I'll let you know if something changes. That's a whole lot easier to go back and say, you know what? I looked at my calendar. Our schedule is pretty clear. We can make it. That's a whole lot easier to do than to back out of a commitment you've already made. Next thing in identifying personal and family priorities for your holiday season is honoring your vocation as a wife and mother. I don't think many of us actually do this. I don't think we sit back and take the time to recognize the unique role that we play in shaping our family's experience. If your roles are fairly traditional in your family, then most of this holiday stuff, holiday planning, holiday gathering, holiday baking, holiday decorating, holiday everything lands on your shoulders. So take some time to recognize that, a lot of the joy and a lot of the memories that come around the holiday season, they're because of your efforts. So take some time to recognize that you have a big role in this, and it should be something that you appreciate about yourself and are thankful for being put in this position where you can have this kind of influence over your family. Also, through this, I would encourage you to balance nurturing others and helping create a wonderful, blessed holiday season for others with your own self care. Yes, we want to do things that are special for our children, but we can't do it if it comes at a cost of our own health, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual health. We have to be able to pour from a cup that's got something in it. You can't pour from an empty cup. We can't pour into others if our cup is empty. So take some time to make sure that you're balancing your own needs with the needs of everybody else. And then this is a great way as a way to honor our vocation as wives and mothers is to model our faith and our values for our children during this season. They are watching us, even if they're little bitty, even if they're adults, they are watching us and watching how we navigate through this season of Advent and Christmas and Thanksgiving and seeing how we handle it. And they will learn. Maybe they want to learn to not do what we've done because we've done too much. Or maybe they want to emulate what we've done and take some of what we've done and carry it on into their future families and their future lives. The reference that I want to share is from the Catechism, number 2207. It says, the family is the original cell of social life. It is the natural society in which husband and wife are called to give themselves in love and the gift of life. We have to nurture our family. That's on us. We have to do it. And I hope that some of these examples, some of these ideas are the ones that you can use to do that. Now, it wouldn't be a holiday season with challenging in laws without some triggers, without common triggers that we have seen or experienced with our in laws. And so I wanted to address some of these and how to prepare for them. So, one of the things that we can all do is figure out a way of how we are going to deal with some unexpected changes to plans. Somebody can get sick. There might be bad weather to contend with. There might be a blow up within the family, and all of a sudden, your plans for Thanksgiving have totally changed because somebody in the family got mad and is no longer speaking to somebody in your family. So, having a flexible mindset is key to adapt to any last minute changes. We can't get so caught up in whatever the event was that we get blinded to finding the blessings in these changes. Have some backup plans for key events or traditions. If, let's say, one of your family traditions is driving around looking at Christmas lights and singing Christmas carols at the top of your lungs, like our family does, let's say some bad weather moves in or somebody gets sick and you can't do it on the night when you normally would do it. Find another time. Plan another night when you can do those things. Have a backup option for those traditions. Then also, it's important to communicate clearly. with your family about any potential changes. So, one thing that happens in a big family like ours is I will talk about something and I think that I've told everyone, and only to find out that right before we're supposed to leave for something, one child is like, I had no idea we were gone. I had no idea we were leaving at this time. And so having clear communication with everybody is really, really important. Now, what should you do if you're facing some criticism or judgment from your extended family? I wouldn't have this podcast if we didn't have issues like this, right? You can prepare some responses ahead of time to common criticisms in advance. And at the end of this podcast, I'm going to direct you to a resource that you can get your hands on for the holidays to help with creating those responses for issues that come up during the holidays with your in laws. You can also practice setting boundaries with respect and firmness. Like I was saying, with how you respond to invitations, short and sweet tends to be the best way forward. And then it's important to be sure to focus on your own family's choices rather than defending them. So instead of going on a tirade of saying, well, the reason we're not doing this is, X, Y, and Z, you can say, this is just the choice that our family has made, and that's how we're going to proceed. The end. Toxic people who are manipulative, people who are deceptive and controlling, they love when we try to defend a certain position that we have, because then they can pick it apart bit by bit. And for some reason, toxic people tend to be really, really good at those kinds of things. So the more information you give to them, the more fuel they have to dismantle it. And then you look like the bad guy. If you keep things very neutral and say, you know what, that's not going to work for our family. We're not going to be having those kind of treats today. That's just how we're going to do it, and leave it at that. It's a whole lot harder to pick an argument with that than if you start going into, well, we've done a lot of research about how sugars affect, our son and da 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 da. That can really set you up for a really nasty, ugly fight. And nobody wants to fight around the holidays, right? Nobody wants to do that. So it's up to us to hold our tongues and to plan out good responses for the arguments we know that are coming, right? We know there's certain things that are triggers in our family, and that will trigger a response from them that is less than charitable. And so we can have some general responses kind of practiced in our minds that we can throw out and keep those fights from escalating into fights, keep those discussions as calm and neutral as possible. If you're going into the holidays and you're feeling overlooked or unappreciated, I get it. Believe me, I get it. There were many times when I felt like I was just the vessel with which grandchildren were brought into the world. And then I really had no purpose beside that except for getting them to their grandparents' house. So it's important, if you start feeling this way, talk to your husband honestly about what is going on, about what you're feeling. Make sure that you use statements that are not accusatory. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. If you have some resistance from your husband with all of these plans and your new commitment to having a peace-filled holiday this year. But don't forget to appreciate and recognize your own efforts. Again, we have been called to this special vocation of being wives, and some of us as mothers. And we do put forth a lot of effort to make the holidays special for everyone in our family. And so take time to recognize and appreciate that and all the work that you have done. And then, if you can, find small ways to treat yourself during this busy, crowded, crazy season. Sometimes for me, a special treat is just using a really nice smelling soap. I know that may sound silly, but it's like taking a shower is one of the times when I am definitely by myself and I'm quiet and I'm alone and I can just enjoy a hot shower and a nicely scented bar of soap. My kids get me this French milled soap. They've gone nuts trying to find it because it's not always easy to find. But I found some that have just this scent that is, it just makes me feel nice. And so find little things like that. Maybe you treat yourself to a Ferrero Rocher little chocolate. Maybe you treat yourself to a walk outside, just enjoying the crunch of the snow, maybe enjoying the fall leaves, whatever it is, find small ways to treat yourself during this season. Proverbs 19:11 says, "Those who are wise are patient. They are praised for their forbearance." Now, I'm not saying that you should forbear toxic behavior. I do want to make that clarification. My in-laws love to throw out the word forbearance as a spiritual jab and a way to try to spiritually abuse my family. So that's not what I'm talking about. We can be wise because we are patient and we have made a plan, right, for these holidays and plan ahead for what's happening and have the patience and forbearance to deal with changes that come up. Let's talk a little bit about balancing family traditions with establishing new ones. My kids have certain traditions that they love to do, but if I can create a new one, I want to do it. Think about the traditions that you go through pretty much every year. Talk about them with your husband and your children. Do they still serve the purpose? Again, we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go in real deep again, but talk about the significance of these traditions with your family. Consider the effort that it takes to make a tradition happen versus the joy that it brings. If your family has traditionally built a massive gingerbread house and there's fighting and there's arguments and she got the best sprinkles or that anything like that, figure out, okay, does the joy outweigh the cost? Whatever the cost is, whether it's financial cost, whether it's the cost of emotions and anxiety and stress, does it work? Does the effort required match the joy that it brings? And then be willing to let go of any traditions that don't fit your family. It is okay to change things up and not do things if they don't work for your family. Maybe your kids have outgrown the elf on the shelf. We never did it because I didn't want to have that kind of commitment put on me during the holiday season. But maybe you did, and maybe you've decided, you know what? It's just a whole lot of work. Find a way for that elf to write a message and tell everybody that he's not coming back this year. It is okay to drop some traditions. And then you can look for new traditions that reflect your values. We tried to do the Jesse tree. I got a little tree and I got really cute ornaments and we had fun putting together the ornaments, but we didn't like it. I don't know. Maybe we're doing it wrong, but the Jesse tree just did not work for our family. It was just one more thing that I had to keep up with on a daily basis. And that is something that I don't do well with. I don't do well with having something like that I have to do. And then I feel bad because, like, oh my goodness, it's been 4 days and we haven't put anything on the tree. And then it was not worth the effort. But think about some activities that align with your faith and family goals that could be new family traditions. You can start small and then try to be consistent in implementing new traditions. Like I said, I tried to be, the Jesse tree is pretty small, but I was not consistent. And then allow some room in your family for these traditions to evolve over time. So maybe what I could have done is instead of having its own separate tree, is just put the Jesse tree ornaments on our regular Christmas tree. Because as Protestants, we do not wait until Christmas Eve to put up our Christmas tree. I know. We do start Christmas in the Advent season. That's something that's been really hard for our family to let go of. I think it's okay. I think God understands, but allow some room for any new traditions that you bring in to change as your family does. And also make sure that you involve your spouse and children, of course, in the decision making. You can hold a family meeting to discuss what your holiday plans are. Give everybody a voice, even the little ones, a voice in what they want to do. And then with that meeting, you can assign some roles and responsibilities so that everybody feels included and so that it doesn't all rest on your shoulders. Not everything has to be our responsibility as wives and mothers. We can give our kids, give our husbands some responsibility in these holiday activities. Now, the reference I want to bring your attention to right now is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church 2204 that says the Christian family is called to be a community of faith, hope, and charity. It should provide an education in the virtues and in prayer. And so this is where our traditions can really line up with our faith. Are we doing traditions that help build our faith, build our hope, increase our levels of charity in our lives? Can we do that through our activities? Now, when we have all these plans, when we have this calendar set before us, it's really important to communicate expectations and boundaries effectively with your husband and with your in-laws. So, when you are talking with your husband and or your in-laws, it's important to practice some assertive yet respectful communication. Not assertiveness without respect, because then that's arrogant, but using I statements to express your needs and your feelings kind of take people from being defensive to just more in the listening mode. If you start saying, well, you do this and you do that, you can understand how that would make somebody feel defensive. So if we come at it from the approach of saying, well, I don't like having my schedule super busy. I need to have some more downtime. That's very different than saying, you keep caving into your family and you keep signing us up for all these things. I think you can tell the difference in how that would make anybody feel. Then it's important to be clear and specific about your expectations. If you have an expectation that your husband is going to hang Christmas lights on the house by a certain day, be clear. If there's a neighborhood competition that you want to get involved in, maybe there's just limited amount of time for him to get them up and you have commitments on other weekends, make sure you let him know respectfully what is needed on his part so that he can plan accordingly. And then make sure that you listen actively to other people's perspectives and try to find some common ground. Now, as husband and wife, it is super important to present a united front when it comes to communicating expectations and boundaries with your in-laws. It is vital that you're both on the same page and you're both in agreement. So I would encourage you to discuss any plans and potential issues privately with your husband first. Don't bring them up in front of your in-laws. That is not the right way to do it. Don't bring it up in front of your parents either. Don't bring it up in front of the children. Talk to him one-on-one. Have some time where you can talk about it, and then you can support each other's decisions in front of your extended family. You've discussed this in privately. You both know where you're coming from. Then you can present to extended family, this is what we have decided. This is what we are going to do. And that presents a unified message when communicating your plans or boundaries. I cannot emphasize enough how critical it is that you and your husband present a unified message, a unified front when it comes to communicating your plans or your boundaries. If you don't, your in-laws will pick it apart and that will not be good. That's not the goal, right? The goal is to be united with your husband and not have your in-laws pulling you apart and picking sides. Now, what are some alternatives that you can use if you have to say no? I did already touch on some ideas already, but one thing you could do is you can suggest different dates or different activities if you have to decline certain invitations. You can also propose certain compromises that respect both your needs and your in law's wishes. Also, you can express your gratitude and your appreciation for being invited to certain events, to certain gatherings, even when you cannot accept them. Colossians 4:6 says, "Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer everyone." And then there's a reference here I wanted to share with you from the Catechism, number 2206. It says, "The relationships within the family bring an affinity of feelings, affections, and interests, arising above all from the members' respect for one another." Affinity of feelings, affections, and interests that comes from respect. So it's important to be respectful when we are declining, when we don't see eye to eye with our in laws, but we can also be firm, right? So you might be saying, all this sounds great. That sounds amazing, but I am facing some resistance from my husband. How do we handle this? How do we approach it? So let's talk about how we can navigate any resistance that you have from your husband. So, first and foremost, approach any discussion that you have with love and respect. Find a calm moment to initiate your conversations. Don't do it at the dinner table. Don't do it during bath time when the kids are having a meltdown. Don't do it when you're at your in laws. Find a calm moment to have these conversations. Make sure you express to him that you love him and you are committed to your marriage first. And then try to frame any changes that you would like to make as ways to strengthen your family bond. So if you don't want to spend all day at your in laws on Christmas Day, maybe you can say, you know what, honey, I'm okay with going to see your parents for lunch on Christmas Day, but I would really like to just come home that afternoon, spend time together as a family, read some of the books that we bought for the children for Christmas, maybe roast marshmallows, maybe do something like that and focus on your own family bonding. Now, another thing that you need to do when you are facing some resistance from your husband is to express your needs clearly without being confrontational. So, again, using those I statements, use some specific examples to illustrate what your concerns are. Don't blame him. Focus on how you are feeling. And then you can ask for his perspective and try to listen to him without interrupting. Let him have his say. He might have some valid points that maybe because of our own tiredness, of our own emotional investment that we've had to a certain whatever it is, that it's not allowing us to see his perspective. So it's important to listen and see where he's coming from. Then also, it's important to recognize the difference between us compromising as wives and enabling any harmful behavior at the hands of our husband. I realize that not everybody listening to this podcast has a husband who is at the place where he is really seeking your marriage first. I get that. I've heard it a lot. And for those of you in those situations, I am not saying any of this to tell you to enable any harmful behavior at the hands of your husband. So, in order for you to better handle this, I would encourage you to have some behaviors that you have decided that that's crossing the line. If your husband speaks to you in a certain way, you can decide, you know what? That is not acceptable for me. Yes, this is my husband, but as a fellow human being, as a fellow person created in God's image, this is not acceptable behavior for me. This is not acceptable talk for me. Spend some time thinking about how you can distinguish between some minor annoyances that your husband does, because all of our husbands do it. We do it to them. There are minor annoyances versus serious issues. If there are issues where your marriage is put into jeopardy, that's serious. If it's a minor annoyance, like my husband accidentally booked a time to go golfing with his friends at a time that we were supposed to go, watch a Christmas concert, that's kind of a minor annoyance, unless it's a pattern, and then that's different. But think about those kind of things. And then if you're not sure what harmful behavior is, because some of us, if we were raised in a home that was not a healthy home, we might have problems distinguishing between behavior that is harmful or behavior that's just kind of annoying. And so if you did grow up in a harmful, maybe abusive or toxic, or maybe just a home that was kind of just a little bit off, I would encourage you to seek out some professional advice on what is healthy and what is not. And maybe not even professional advice. Maybe you're just reaching out to some friends and saying, "But does this sound like healthy behavior? Is this something that you and your husband deal with?" If you have a friend that you trust and can rely on for talking about these kinds of situations. And, it is important to have a support network of friends, mentors, or counselors that you can turn to when needed. So I would encourage you, have a network of supportive people who understand your situation, even if it's only online. I cannot tell you what a blessing women online have been to me during this difficult journey that my husband and I have been on with his parents. The words of wisdom from some of these women has truly changed my life. And so I do not discount the wealth of encouragement and knowledge, wisdom that can come from connecting with other women online. You can also consider speaking with your priest, maybe somebody else who is in a leadership position, and somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to, a counselor, or find some support groups. Maybe one of the issues that you have within your family has to do with substance abuse. I understand that those groups can be especially helpful and encouraging and help make you feel seen and validated, because a lot of times if we are in a toxic environment, we don't feel seen or validated. And that's so important to recognize that you're not crazy. It's not you, it's a situation. And maybe there is a part that you've had to play in it, but it's not all on you. It's not all your fault. So, with that, I want to share this scripture with you from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 2 and 3. With all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. We should desire peace, hence the name of my podcast, Catholic Wives Desiring Peace, with humility, with gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another. All of this without subjecting ourselves to abusive behavior. The church is clear that abuse does draw a different line in the sand for these kinds of issues. So I am not using this scripture to enable abuse in any way, shape, or form. Do not use these scriptures to put yourself down, to make you feel bad. And if somebody is using these scriptures against you to try to control you, that's spiritual abuse. That's spiritual abuse. So I'm definitely not encouraging that. We should seek peace, but not by sacrificing ourselves on the altar of the desires of toxic people, abusive people. And then I want to share one final reference from the Catholic Catechism. It's 1641. The grace of the sacrament of matrimony is intended to perfect the couple's love and to strengthen their indissoluble unity. By this grace, they, quote, help one another to attain holiness in their married life and in welcoming and educating their children. We are called to be good spouses, husband to the wife and wife to the husband. We are supposed to use our faith and our lives to increase this unity that God brought together and cannot be destroyed. So I hope that this podcast is helpful. I hope that you have felt like now you can approach this holiday season and be a little more prepared for what is to come. I didn't always look at the holidays with a sense of dread. I kind of would forget all of the things that had happened in the past. And so when they would come up again, it was like it just kind of slapped me in the face. And so I really feel like if I had taken the time to sit down and plan things out, I could have been a whole lot better prepared, both emotionally and spiritually, to face the challenges that were inevitable with any time we got together with my in laws. Now, on this note, I want to share with you a resource that I have available for you. If you would like to purchase it, it is my holiday scripts for dealing with toxic in laws. It is a collection of scenarios and responses that you can use during this holiday season to address certain issues that come up with your in laws. The responses that I provide for you are respectful, they are also assertive, and they allow you to speak up without being uncharitable. So, if you are interested in getting this for your holiday season so that you can be fully prepared for, or rather, as prepared as you could be for interactions with your in laws this holiday season, I encourage you to go to desiringpeace.com/holiday. Desiringpeace.com/holiday. It's going to be at a super low price just for my podcast listeners and just for those who are on my email list. So you can feel a little bit more confident going into this holiday season and not filled with anxiety and stress and dread. I mean, that might still be there. There's probably still going to be some anxiety because that's just what happens when you're around toxic people and you don't really know how they're going to respond. But at least you can go in with a little more confidence, knowing that you can respond in a way that honors God and honors your in laws as fellow human beings. So, God bless you. I hope this is a podcast that you can use to bring you peace this coming holiday season for Thanksgiving, for Advent, for Christmas, for the Christmas season, all of those things. We can have God's peace during that time. Thank you for listening. Go in peace. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you've ever wondered just how toxic your relationship with your in-laws really is, I've got the perfect tool for you. Introducing the new free Toxic In-Laws Assessment, a self-graded quiz designed to help you identify the true level of toxicity in your relationship with your in-laws. Whether you're unsure if your in-laws are really that bad or you think they might be worse than you realize, this assessment will give you the clarity you need. Don't leave it to guesswork. Take the free Toxic In-Laws Assessment now and start your journey towards healthier and more peaceful family dynamics. Visit desiringpeace.com/quiz to get started. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.